Hi everyone, Greg here. Now in the previous video I said I was reading this book, I wasn't really enjoying it. I am still reading it even though I'm not that much further ahead. And basically I said it was shallow, that it lacked depth. And I've been thinking about it more since because he is, an author that a lot of people like, and I've been asking myself, okay, what is it about this that I don't really like and that's not really connecting with me? And I think it's a good thing to learn from the masters, and those are books that are both widely acclaimed and I have personally enjoyed. And H.G. Wells, he is becoming one of my favorite authors, and I want to read more from him. But The Invisible Man, and everybody knows The Invisible Man, it's such an iconic book. And then you have 1965 Dune by Frank Herbert. So that came out in 1897, 1965. I also wanted to take an example that was a lot more modern. So 2001, The Magician's Guild. This author, she's not my favorite author by any means, but she is still someone I would consider to be a good author. And this came out in 2018. And Brandon Sanderson, his first published book came out in 2005. So he should be really good by that time. This is about as good, and especially since he was writing a lot of books before he was published, this is probably about as good as it's gonna get. So this should be not necessarily his masterpiece, but this should be a really excellent work of his. So I'm going to switch to the screen capture on my laptop. I'm going to read the first page of each one of those books. I'm going to analyze them, and then we're going to see if there is anything about them that is qualitatively different.
Dune, Chapter 1. In the week before their departure to Arrakis, when all the final scurrying about had reached a nearly unbearable frenzy, an old crone came to visit the mother of the boy, Paul. It was a warm night at Castle Caladan, and the ancient pile of stone that had served the Atreides family as home for 26 generations bore that cool sweat feeling it acquired before a change in the weather. The old woman was led in by the side door down the vaulted passage by Paul's room, and she was allowed a moment to peer in at him while he lay in his bed. By the half-light of a dispenser lamp, dimmed and hanging near the floor, the awakened boy could see a bulky female shape at his door, standing one step ahead of his mother. The old woman was a witch shadow, hair like matted spiderwebs, hooded round darkness of features, eyes like glittering jewels. "Is he not small for his age, Jessica?" the old woman asked. Her voice wheezed and twanged like an untuned baliset. Paul's mother answered in her soft contralto. "The Atreides are known to start late getting their growth, Your Reverence." Okay, so there's basically three things I would like to point out here. Number one is the amount of information that we're getting. We know that it's the week before their departure, and we know they're going to Arrakis. We don't yet know, and of course you have to imagine that you read this for the first time and you go in blind, so ignore what you might already know. So we're going to Arrakis, we don't know where it is or what it is. We're told that they're living at Castle Caladan. So a castle, you imagine a place that is big, you imagine wealth, you imagine power, you imagine a family of a certain nobility, you imagine a lot of servants that are packing a lot of stuff. And of course that ties in with the scurrying about and the nearly unbearable frenzy. There's a lot going on, a lot of people doing a lot of work to be ready, because it's only 1 week to go before they leave. And that castle has been their home for 26 generations. And now they're leaving. So whatever it is, whatever the reason is for them to leave, it must be a big deal. So then this old woman is coming. We know that this woman is in a position of authority. She's in a position of authority because she's being referred to as Your Reverence. But also his mother allows her to peer in at her son's room, at Paul's room, which is a bit creepy. So we're getting a lot of information here, but there's also a lot of questions being raised. What is Arrakis? Why they're leaving? Who is this old woman? What is she doing there? Why is she interested in Paul? And also the old woman asking, is he not small for his age? It's suggesting coming of age here. And so questions being raised. And if you want to know what's going on, then you just have to continue reading. So because I have those questions, I've been given a reason now to continue reading. Okay, I may want to know the answers. I'm going to get the answers if I continue to read. And number 3 is that a clear dynamic is being presented here. You have 3 people mentioned so far. You have the mother, Paul, and the Reverend Mother. The Reverend Mother is in a position of authority, and she's interested in Paul for some reason. So that is the tension, that is the dynamic that we are getting here. And a scene has already been set out for us. The beginning of a story is already there in just that little bit of text. Chapter 1. The Strange Man's Arrival. The stranger came early in February, one wintry day, through a biting wind and a driving snow, the last snowfall of the year, over the dawn, walking from Bramblehurst railway station and carrying a little black portmanteau in his thickly gloved hand. He was wrapped up from head to toe, and the brim of his soft felt hat hid every inch of his face, but the shiny tip of his nose. The snow had piled itself against his shoulders and chest, and added a white crest to the burden he carried. He staggered into the coach and horses, more dead than alive, and flung his portmanteau down. "A fire!" he cried. "In the name of human charity, a room and a fire!" He stamped and shook the snow from off himself in the bar, and followed Mrs. Hall into her guest parlour to strike his bargain. And with that much introduction, that and a couple of sovereigns flung on the table, he took up his quarters in the inn. Mrs. Hall lit the fire and left him there, while she went to prepare him a meal with her own hands. A guest to stop at Iping in the winter-time was an unheard-of piece of luck, let alone a guest who was no haggler, and she was resolved to show herself worthy of her good fortune. As soon as the bacon was well under way, and Milly, her lymphatic aid, had been brisked up a bit by a few deftly chosen expressions of contempt, she carried the cloth, plates, and glasses into the parlour, and began to lay them with the utmost eclat. Although the fire was burning up briskly, she was surprised to see that her visitor still wore his hat and coat, standing with his back to her and staring out the window at the falling snow in the yard. His gloved hands were clasped behind him, and he seemed to be lost in thought. She noticed that the melted snow that still sprinkled his shoulders dripped upon her carpet. "Can I take your hat and coat, sir?" she said, "and give them a good dry in the kitchen?" "No," he said without turning. He was not sure she had heard him, and was about to repeat her question. He turned his head and looked at her over his shoulder. "I prefer to keep them on," he said with emphasis, and she noticed that he wore big blue spectacles with sidelights, and a bushy side whisker over his coat collar that completely hid his cheeks and face. "Very well, sir," she said, "as you like. In a bit the room will be warmer." Okay, so with the Invisible Man, the same kind of thing. We're given a lot of information. Okay, we have an idea of the journey he went through. So he came from the train station. We know it's winter. We know it's cold. We know that he is struggling with the cold. He wants a room. We know that the Invisible Man seems to have plenty of money. A couple of sovereigns. They're flung upon the table. So if you're gonna throw money on the table, then you're casual about money. You probably have a lot of money and you don't care much about it. Otherwise, you'd probably handle it more carefully. And he didn't haggle. So that tells us that he's probably very comfortable financially. We know that what he is doing is unusual, since for a guest to stop at that inn is an unheard of piece of luck. We know that the host is very conscientious, and that she wants to make sure that she shows herself worthy of her good fortune. In other words, she's going to take good care of her guest. Then she's giving out to Milly that she has to kick into action and do some work. Bacon is being prepared. And Mrs. Hall, she notices that the melted snow was dripping upon her carpet. So she probably cares about her stuff. She doesn't like the idea of water dripping on her carpet, and so she offers to take his coat and hat. Those are the things that we're being told Those are the things we know. We are given a lot in terms of the dynamics between the two characters. He is willing to pay, but he wants to be left alone. She wants to be a good host, but she's a little puzzled by the bandages and why he's not removing his hat and coat. And so the obvious question here for us, and because the story is so famous, we kind of already know this is going to be the Invisible Man. We kind of already know that the bandages are there to hide the fact that he is invisible. But despite the fact that we know that, the question that we may ask ourselves next is, how is that going to play out? Yeah, he's just not going to remove his coat, he's just not going to remove his hat or bandages, and she's going to be wondering why. Right, so that's a page and a half, and I'm already completely in the story. Right, there's already quite a bit that has happened. There's already kind of a relationship that's been established here. And I'm wondering, okay, how is that going to play out? What's going to happen next? Okay, this is The Magician's Guild, Chapter 1, The Purge. It is said in Amardin that the wind has a soul, and that it wails through the narrow city streets because it is grieved by what it finds there. On the day of the purge it whistled amongst the swaying masts in the marina, rushed through the western gates, and screamed between the buildings. Then, as if appalled by the ragged souls it met there, it quietened to a whimper. Or so it seemed to Sonia. As another gust of cold wind battered her, she wrapped her arms around her chest and hugged her worn coat closer to her body. Looking down, she scowled at the dirty sludge that splashed over her shoes with each step she took. The cloth she had stuffed into her oversized boots was already saturated, and her toes stung with the chill. A sudden movement to her right caught her attention, and she sidestepped as a man with straggly grey hair staggered towards her from an alley entrance, fell to his knees. Stopping, Sonia offered her hand, but the old man did not seem to notice. He clambered to his feet and joined the hunched figures making their way down the street. Sighing, Sonia peered around the edge of her hood. A guard slouched in the entrance of the alley. His mouth was curled into a sneer of disdain. His gaze flitted from figure to figure. She narrowed her eyes at him, but when his head turned in her direction, she quickly looked away. Curse the guards, she thought. May they all find poisonous farron crawling in their boots. Okay, here what do I get as information? Amardin, so that seems to be the city. It is said in Amardin that the wind has a soul, so maybe there's some folklore here, some saying, some expression in the town. The wind has a soul and it is grieved by what it finds there. So that means a lot of misery, maybe a lot of poverty, maybe a lot of suffering. Then a purge. Well, that doesn't sound good. Then we have already met Sonia. We know that she is poor. It doesn't say it, but she's cold. Okay, she has a worn coat, shoes that apparently are too big for her, and because she had to stuff them with cloth. That cloth is now saturated, and so now her feet are very cold. Right? So she's poor. She's wearing boots that are too big, and she's struggling to keep herself warm. Then there's this guy stumbling in front of her, and she's offering her hand for the guy to get up, so suggesting that Sonia might be a person who cares, trying to help, who's trying to do the right thing. And this guy is walking away from somewhere. He doesn't notice her. Maybe he's preoccupied. Walking away and joined the hunched figures making their way down the street. So he's not on his own. There's several people there trying to get away from something, trying to get away from this alley. And then she's looking at that direction. Then she sees a guard in the entrance of the alley, presumably where those people were coming from. And the guard has a mouth curled in a sneer of disdain. So the guard is looking down on people. But she was being nice, trying to help. So there's already that suggestion being made here that she's gonna be with the good guys and the guards maybe the bad guys. And he's looking, his gaze flitted from figure to figure. So what that insinuates is that he's looking for somebody. They're using rough tactics and they're chasing people away. She narrowed her eyes at him, so she's not liking him. And then she's cursing him again. She's not liking him. So we're given information and we're being presented a dynamic whereby Sania doesn't like the guards for some reason, and the guards are looking for somebody, and she's wearing a hood. So could she be among those that those guards are looking for? There's that dynamic there, that tension already established. Skyward, Chapter 1. I stalked my enemy carefully through the cavern. I'd taken off my boots so they wouldn't squeak. I'd removed my socks so I wouldn't slip. The rock under my feet was uncomfortably cool as I took another silent step forward. This deep, the only light came from the faint glow of the worms on the ceiling, feeding off the moisture seeping through the cracks. You had to sit for minutes in the darkness for your eyes to adjust to that faint light. Another quiver in the shadows. There, near those dark lumps that must be enemy fortifications. I froze in a crouch, listening to my enemy scratch the rock as he moved. I imagined a Krell, a terrible alien with red eyes and dark armor. With a steady hand, agonizingly slow, I raised my rifle to my shoulder, held my breath, and fired. A squeal of pain was my reward. Yes! I patted my wrist, activated my father's light line, sprang to life with a reddish-orange glow, blinding me for a moment. Then I rushed forward to claim my prize. One dead rat, speared straight through. In the light, shadows I had imagined as enemy fortifications revealed themselves as rocks. My enemy was a plump rat, and my rifle was a makeshift spear gun. 9.5 years had passed since that fateful day when I had climbed to the surface with my father, but my imagination was as strong as ever. It helped relieve the monotony to pretend I was doing something more exciting than hunting rats. I held up the dead rodent by its tail. Thus you know the fury of my anger, fell beast. So now looking at this story, how much information are we really being given here? Now I want to be fair, we are given information. We know she's in a cavern. Now the thing is, she's not just casually in a cavern. She doesn't just happen to hang out there. She lives underground, okay? Most of that civilization lives underground. That's kind of a wasted opportunity. We're not being told this here. So she took off her boots and her socks. That is implying that she's good at stealth. She's a good hunter. Okay, fair enough. She can hunt. We're being told that aliens in the story, right? So the Krell, terrible alien with red eyes and dark armor. We're being told about a light line, just some kind of glowing whip. Okay, not exactly a lightsaber, but something more like a whip that is glowing, and that is from her father. Okay, fair enough. Now, at this point in the story, are there any questions I ask myself? Well, no, I don't. There's nothing I really care about at this point. I've not been given a reason to care about it. I've been given an anecdote out of her life. Okay, she is hunting rats. And there's no dynamic here. There's no story here yet. Okay, she killed a rat. And she has a father. And she went to the surface with her father. And that's all I know. There's no dynamic. The story hasn't really started yet. Nothing so far has happened that makes me say, oh, what's gonna happen next? Nothing so far has happened that makes me go, okay, what is that about? What is that dynamic like? Or how is that gonna play out? Nothing. She hunts a rat. Whatever. This is what I mean with it's shallow. You have given me no reason to care.
Alright, so I made a decision. I DNF this book. Right? It's not good. It's shallow. And I just don't care about it. And this is the second time I made an attempt at reading Brandon Sanderson. And now I know this guy is not for me. Right? I mean, I've seen him on a lot of YouTube videos. He seems to be a nice guy, but as a writer, I don't care for him. Okay, I've begun reading this book, The Priory of the Orange Tree. I'm only 10 pages in, right? And I've already enjoyed this book an awful lot more than this one. Okay, this looks very promising. So, do you agree with me? Do you think I've been too harsh on Brandon Sanderson, or do you think that's just right? Let me know. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you like Brandon Sanderson, and if you do, tell me why. What do you see in him? Okay? So, those were my thoughts. Hope you enjoyed watching. Thank you very much.